Hello, hi, a very happy good evening. So this is Krishna Ma'am. We're talking about the story of life on earth, and that's biology. So thank you so much for joining me on this new beginning series. So here we are talking about the reproduction, the human reproduction chapter. So today our topic is menstrual cycle. So in the last class we have been discussing about the process of gametogenesis. So we discussed oogenesis. So how the female gamete is formed, that is the ovum, right? So before that we discussed about the spermatogenesis, because for the process of sexual reproduction, the gametes are very important. So once the gametes are produced, so then we have to see how the gametes meet, right? So before we actually go, so we are done talking about the portion where the gametes are formed. So today we're going to see what is the menstrual cycle that happens in primates. So in non-primates it's oestrus cycle, and in primates it's menstrual cycle. So let's see how the menstrual cycle happens in human female. So I hope you guys are doing good. So thank you once again for watching my lecture. So please do like, share and subscribe. So it's a pleasure touching you all and interacting with you all, and touching your lives and changing your perspective of biology. So please don't forget to like, share and subscribe once again. So here we are, let's move forward with your menstrual cycle. So before that I'll give you a quick recap of what is oogenesis, so that you're in touch with what we did in the last lecture. Just give me a minute. Yes. So if you remember, we are done so far. So today we are supposed to do menstrual cycle. So we are done till the process of gametogenesis, right? So let's talk about menstrual cycle today. So before that, a quick recap of what is the process of oogenesis. So when the process of oogenesis happens, so the process of oogenesis begins at the fetal developmental stage itself, whereas the process of spermatogenesis begins during the puberty time in males, right? So let's continue from here. So we are talking about the process of oogenesis. So oogenesis begins at the time of fetal embryonic development. So what happens during the fetal embryonic development? You have certain cells, you have about a couple of million gamete cells. We call them as oogonia, right? So it is only these cells that will make up, that is present towards the entire lifetime of the female. So no more cells are added or deleted or formed later, okay? So what happens at the time of birth? So this oogonia tries to undergo meiotic division. But unfortunately, it gets arrested during the prophase 1 of meiosis. So the resultant arrested product is your primary oocyte. Okay, so this primary oocyte is now surrounded by a layer of cells that is called as the primary follicles. So from the time of birth till the time the child attains puberty, a lot of primary follicles along with the primary oocyte is degenerated. So you can say at the time of puberty you have only 60,000 to 80,000 oogonia or primary follicles left. Alright, so this primary follicle slowly, so this primary oocyte will be slowly covered by a new layer of follicular cells, that is the secondary follicle. The secondary follicle will be surrounded by a new thicker layer, and slowly the primary oocyte will be surrounded by a much developed or mature follicle, that is your tertiary follicle. So the tertiary follicle has a fluid filled cavity that is called as the antrum. Alright, so far these process happens from the child birth till the puberty period. Alright, yes ma'am, a very happy good evening. So thank you so much for joining my lecture this evening. So please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Right, so at the time of puberty, so you have your primary oocyte which is surrounded by the tertiary follicle. So this completes its first meiotic division. So it gets arrested during birth, no? That is completed here. Alright. So when it completes, it forms your secondary oocyte surrounded by the tertiary follicle. So at the end of at the end of the first meiotic division, you should have two cells. First is the secondary oocyte, the secondary one is the tiny polar body. Alright, so you have two haploid cells getting produced. So this tertiary follicle gradually develops into a mature Graafian follicle. So this gradually develops into a mature Graafian follicle. So now, in between the Graafian follicle and the secondary oocyte, another layer is formed, that is zona pellucida. Alright, yes. Hello Vivek, a very, very happy good evening. Thank you so much for joining my lecture today. So please do like, share and subscribe. So this is done. So now what happens is slowly the Graafian follicles rupture to release your secondary oocyte, which is surrounded by your zona pellucida. So you guys can ask me a doubt, ma'am, only first meiotic division is done, the second meiotic division is not completed. Hold on, the second meiotic division will be completed once the sperm encounters the ovum. So until then, the process stops here. So this was what I was talking in oogenesis in the last lecture. So today we are going to talk about the process of menstrual cycle in female. So let's see what I have to tell you. So the menstrual cycle process, the reproductive cycle in female primates are called as menstrual cycle. So it includes your monkeys, apes and the human beings. The one that happens in case of your dogs, tiger, lion is your oestrus cycle. They are non-primates, alright? Yeah. So the first menstruation begins at puberty. So the start of the menstrual cycle, the start of menstruation is your menarche. And the end of the menstrual cycle is your menopause. So remember these two terms. In human females, menstruation is repeated on an average interval of 28 to 29 days. So it's a cycle that happens from day 0 to day 28 to 29, and then it again starts from day 0. So it keeps on rotating. So it's a cycle. So that's why we say it's a menstrual cycle. Alright, so cycle of events starting from first menstruation till the next, this is the cycle of events. It's a series of events and hence we call it as the menstrual cycle. So one ovum is released during the process of ovulation during each menstrual cycle. Alright, so this is the introduction about menstruation. So yes sir, a very, very happy good evening. So thank you so much for joining my lecture. So please do like, share and subscribe. So yeah, talking about your menstruation, so that happens in the human primates. It happens in the female primates, including your apes, monkeys and human beings. So the start of the menstrual cycle or start of menstruation is during puberty, that is menarche. So the end is called as the menopause, alright? Fine. So the average duration is 28 to 29 days. It can vary from one individual to the other. So we are going to see how this process of menstruation happens. So I will show it in the form of a picture first and then we'll read all the theory that is written. So I will teach you from the picture first so that it's easy for you to grasp it, whatever I am saying. So we'll go to the picture. I guess I have the picture. Okay, I have a lot of lines written. Yeah, this is the picture I was looking for. Okay, so the human menstrual cycle, the menstrual cycle that happens in primates is of 4 stages, right? So we start from your menstrual phase. So this is the first phase that we start with. So stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 and stage 4. So the female menstrual cycle has 4 stages. We start from this stage, okay. The first stage is called as the menstrual phase. So it starts from day 0 to day 5. So it's a period of 28 days, right? So from day 0 to day 5, so in some females it can be day 0 to, it can be day 1 to day 3 or it can be 1 to 5. Alright, so what happens in the menstrual cycle? So if you see in the menstrual cycle, the endometrium layer of the uterus. So when I was discussing the female reproductive system, so we spoke about what is called as the layers of the uterus, right? So perimetrium, myometrium and endometrium. So the endometrium layer of the uterus, the innermost layer of the uterus, the endometrium, it sheds during every menstrual cycle. So menstrual cycle, the first phase, the menstrual phase or the bleeding phase. So what bleeds is the blood vessels of the endometrium. So endometrium is the place where the fetus should get implanted. If there is no fertilization, if there is no onset of pregnancy, then there is no need of this endometrium layer. So it feels so dejected that it washes off, it disrupts, it dismantles itself and come out along the vaginal opening. So it is literally the bleeding phase or the menstrual phase. The unfertilized egg also comes along with the blood vessels. Alright, so this is your first phase. So it can happen from day 1 to day 3 or from day 1 to day 5. Clear? So now the next phase is follicular phase. Anything that is damaged takes time to heal. But at the same time, anything that is damaged undergoes a process called healing. So your body is the most, I would say the most wonderful creature of all that is being in the world, because all organisms have this ability to cure or heal themselves. So even you take n number of medicines, unless and until your body decides to heal itself, the healing will not happen. The healing is an innate property of the human body or of the superheroes called as cells, right? So anything that is damaged undergoes healing on its own. So the follicular phase is where the endometrium, which got disintegrated here, tries to reform itself. So it is a regrowing phase, or you can say it's the rehealing phase. So it is broken, dejected because it has no role, but it tries to heal itself. So it forms itself back, it regenerates, right? So as the endometrium regenerates itself, so is a new secondary oocyte getting formed. So secondary oocyte is formed after the first meiotic division, right? Okay, so that is what happens in the follicular phase. So when I say secondary oocyte is getting ready, which means the secondary oocyte surrounded by the zona pellucidea, which is in turn surrounded by the Graafian follicle, is ready. Right? So that is what I mean when the secondary oocyte is also getting ready simultaneously. Right? So after the follicular phase, you have the next phase, that is the ovulation phase. So what happens during ovulation? That was the end result of your oogenesis, right? So at the time, what happens? The Graafian follicles rupture. So if you remember, I showed you an image in the last lecture where the Graafian follicle ruptures to release the secondary oocyte, and that process is called as ovulation, right? So here what happens in the ovulation phase, the Graafian follicles rupture to release your secondary oocyte, which is surrounded by the zona pellucidea layer. Alright, so when it comes out, so that is your ovulatory phase. So when the secondary oocyte surrounded by zona pellucidea comes out of the ovary, so that is your ovulatory phase. Done. So 3 phases are done. So first is your menstrual phase. So this can go up to 1 to 3 days or 1 to 5 days. Okay. So from the 6th day till the next 13th day, so this is from 6th to the 13th day, it is follicular phase. Exactly on the 14th day, it is ovulatory phase. The ovum is released, the egg of the female is released. So once the egg is released, the egg will wait in the ampullary isthmic junction for some time. Say for example, it waits for 24 hours, and if there is no sperm that is coming to encounter it, it will next undergo the menstrual phase. So in the ovulatory phase, the ovum is released. Alright, and now the ovum has reached the ampullary region. So from the ovary, it goes and reaches the ampulla, for which you have the fimbriae in the infundibulum, right? The next is the luteal phase. So in the luteal phase, actually it feels very sad. So in the luteal phase, actually the endometrium is all set. So they are awaiting fertilization, but when no fertilization happens, then your menstrual cycle happens. So this is the entire menstrual cycle. So did you understand the overview of the entire thing. So what happens in the menstrual phase, the follicular phase, the ovulatory phase and the luteal phase? It's very simple, so read it with a picture, with the help of a picture, so it's easy than reading something very monotonously in the form of paragraphs and lines in theory. So incorporate diagrams, incorporate your own theories, explain it yourself, as a result of which the concept becomes much easier. All right. Yes, Piyush, hello, very happy good evening. So thank you so much for joining my lecture today. So please do like, share and subscribe. Right. So now we go back to the few lines that I have on the board. So let's see. So we are going to start with the menstrual phase. So the menstrual phase starts, the menstrual cycle starts with the menstrual phase, that is the phase 1, right? The menstrual flow lasts for 3 to 5 days. It can vary from one individual to the other. The menstrual flow is the breakdown of the endometrial lining of the uterus as well as its blood vessels. It is literally the bleeding phase, right? So the liquid comes out through the vagina. The menstruation occurs because the ovum was not fertilized. The ovum, which was awaiting fertilization or the encounter of a sperm, was disappointed, so this happens, right? So the lack of menstruation, if a girl does not get the menstrual cycle, it means it can be pregnancy because they are testing positive for the pregnancy hormones, or it can also be due to stress, or it can as well be due to poor health. So in a female who is expecting the baby or is willing to get conceived, so lack of menstrual cycle can be pregnancy, but in case of a lot of adolescent girls, it can be mere stress or the PCOS or poor health conditions. They do not have a proper lifestyle, right? So the menstrual phase is followed by what is called as the follicular phase. So let's talk about the follicular phase. So the follicular phase, the primary follicles from the ovary, they fully mature and grow to become the Graafian follicles, because the secondary oocyte is getting ready simultaneously, right? So simultaneously endometrium regenerates through proliferation. So that is why your follicular phase is also called as a proliferative phase. Okay, so changes in the ovary and the uterus are induced. The levels of the pituitary hormones are pretty high. The gonadotropin levels are pretty high. Right, so you have LH and FSH. So during the follicular phase, the LH and FSH levels are quite high. Okay, so it stimulates the follicular development as well as the stimulation of estrogen. So they allow the follicles to grow from the tertiary follicles to the Graafian follicles and so on. So LH and FSH attains a peak level, especially LH is very high on the 14th day. So we call that as the LH surge. So you call this a price surge, where you have an increase in price of petroleum or something, right? So when there's a very high level of LH, that is on the 14th day, that is when the Graafian follicle ruptures. So for the Graafian follicle to rupture, your LH concentration should be pretty high. Okay, so the rapid secretion of LH is the maximum during the mid-cycle, so 28. So 28 is the average duration, half of 28 is 14. So exactly on the 14th day, you have the LH surge, which releases the ovum, that is your ovulatory phase. Alright, so the ovulatory phase is followed by the luteal phase. Just like the follicular phase has another name, that is called as your proliferative phase. So your luteal phase is also called as your secretory phase. Alright. Yeah, the ovulatory phase is followed by the luteal phase, where the remaining Graafian follicle gets converted into corpus luteum. So Graafian follicle is ruptured. So when you peel off the oranges, the orange peel looks fresh, but when you leave it for some time, it dries, right? So similarly, Graafian follicle is the immediate one, but as it grows old, as it degenerates, it forms corpus luteum. It is this corpus luteum that secretes your progesterone, which is your pregnancy hormone. So to support pregnancy, you need a particular female hormone called as progesterone, which is secreted by the corpus luteum. Alright, so the endometrium gets ready for implantation because they are awaiting fertilization and implantation. So during pregnancy, so that is why you don't have menstrual phase, because the next phase does not happen because the egg is no more sad, right? Yeah, so the absence of fertilization. So when the body comes to know that there is no fertilization and the LH concentration has come down, so it's more than the 17th day. So what they do is that the corpus luteum degenerates. There's no point in it producing progesterone. So it degenerates and it becomes the corpus albicans. Alright, so the corpus luteum degenerates, it disintegrates, and the next cycle of the menstrual phase starts. So the menstrual cycle stops at the average age of 45 to 46. Okay, you can say the maximum age limit is 50, so that is your menopause. All right, so cyclic menstruation is very important for the normal reproductive phase. So that is how the pair of ovaries function. So every month you collect one ovum from each of the ovary. Okay, so that is how it functions. So that is how your menstrual cycle is all about. So that is how it runs along. So you have the menstrual phase, then you have the follicular or the secretory follicular or the proliferative phase, you have the ovulatory phase, then you have the luteal or the secretory phase. All right, yes. So I hope I have made menstrual cycle very clear. So you can see this graph. So this graph is from your textbook, right? So exactly on the 14th day they would have marked ovulation. So this is the secondary oocyte that is coming out. So this degenerated one gets converted into corpus luteum. Corpus luteum secretes progesterone. When there's no need for the progesterone, so this gets converted into corpus albicans and degenerates. So this is your entire graph. All right. So menstrual cycle is done. So I hope you guys understood and it was pretty easy. So if not, please let me know. I'll explain it much slower so that you get it. All right, so just give me 1 or 2 lectures where we are going to talk about pregnancy, fertilization. So we are going to talk about fertilization, implantation and embryogenesis. So I'll be done with this chapter. So once I am done with this chapter, so I have a lot of exciting plans for you for the students who are going to appear for the July 17th, 2022 exam. So please hold on until then. So just bear with me for 2 more lectures. So I'll come up with a lot of new ideas I have. So we'll come up. So it will be easy for our preparation. All right. So thank you so much for watching my lecture. So let me know if it was useful or not, if you guys genuinely understood or not. And if you genuinely find my teaching very interesting and you are able to comprehend what I'm saying, so please do like, share and subscribe. So let your friends know about my channel. So thank you once again. So I will meet you on Monday. So until then, this is me signing off. So take care and have a fantastic weekend. Thank you. Bye.